Okay, so here's your video tutorial on how to make delicious, nutritious, healthy, magical, musical beans. So first, let's go over our ingredients. We have garlic and an white onion, and then I get the Johnsonville beer brats, kind of softer skin. Then we have our ham hocks. Probably only use one. I usually get 2 cans of black-eyed peas and 3 cans of Great Northern beans. And we're going to start with our big pot for the beans on one side and our skillet on the other. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chop up these brats into segments. Hang on a second. So I like to cut my brats up into about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 inch sections. That way they kind of brown faster and they're kind of bite-sized once you get them in the beans. Okay, so we end up with our chopped sausage. We'll go ahead and take that, if I can do it without spilling it, and we'll put it into our skillet, which you will turn on to medium-high. Dump our sausage in there. I'm going to break it up. And we'll just let that go. Okay, the next step is to get started with the onions. Okay, I had to stop and it's going to steam up here. I had to stop and clean my cutting board, so I apologize. See if that will stay without falling. Next, we're going to cut up our white onion. Our brats here. I'm going to knock them around, keep them separated. Okay, then we'll take our onion. Okay, so we got our onions. I'm going to do the same thing to garlic and be right back. Okay, so we got our garlic here. We got our onions chopped up into nice, delicious bite-sized biteables. And I'm now going to dump those into our pot. Okay, so we got our onions and our garlic in the pot. We're going to add a little butter, could be margarine, could be whatever. And then we're going to turn the stove on to about medium-high on this stove, a little over medium-high, just to get that in there. And we have right now chopped garlic and onions in the pan, and our brats are looking good. Slowly browning those up. They will cook some in the beans, but they're better if they got a little brown to them. So right now is when I usually like to salt and pepper it. I think the salt helps with the onions. And I'll give it a pretty good salting. You know, a lot of it's going to cook down or cook out. And a little bit of pepper. Not a lot, but just enough to kind of give it some flavor. Our sausage here, getting good. Looking good. There are onions and garlic in here. We're just going to keep giving the occasional stir to make sure the butter coats everything. Now in the course of this browning your onions, you're probably going to get some, see this brown scalding on the side of the pot? And that's pretty normal. Once we put the chicken broth in, we can kind of, wash that off the sides and reintegrate it into the beans, but it's not a problem. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up these jars, or these cans, so you don't need to see that. So our brats are done. They're brown, 95% cooked. The rest of them will happen inside the beans. So I'm going to take these out of the skillet, and I'm going to put them on a paper plate with a paper towel and absorb some of this grease just to try and make it as healthy as possible. In the meantime, our onions are looking good. They're getting shiny. Shows they're starting to caramelize. We don't want them too overcooked, but we want to get them started cooking. So we don't want them soft, but we don't want them crunchy. All right, so I'm still opening beans. At this point, what I would do, well, I got you on the deal, so I'll open up our ham hocks. I'm going to do this all with one hand. And what I do is I just kind of make a spot in the middle, which would be right directly over the flame. And I'll take our ham hock and I'll find kind of the meatiest part, and I'll put that down right on the bottom. So we can start to get that ham hock cooking and getting hot and releasing some of its fats and its flavor. All right, I'm going to open cans and we'll move on. Okay, so we got our ham hock sweating really good, so he's releasing his flavors. The onions are just starting to get a brown tinge to them, which is what we want. And like this stuff on the side of the pot, don't worry about that. When we put the broth in, we'll rinse it away. We're just getting some browning with the onions, so we're ready for our broth. So this time I'm using, just because of the availability, I've got one package of chicken stock and one package of chicken broth. Now, hang on a second. Okay, I've got one of chicken broth and one of chicken stock. I usually use chicken stock and bone broth, but they didn't have any, so. And I'm just going to pour this right into, I'm just going to pour that right in there and squirt it over on these areas where the onions have kind of charred to the side of the pot. I'll just kind of scrub that stuff off the side there. It comes off pretty well. Get that good onion flavor back into the beans. And I'll put in the other one. So this is my second broth. I'm going to add that directly in. Set them in at the bottom. So right now we've got our onions and our garlic sauteed. We've got our ham hock that we kind of insta-fried on the bottom when we first put it in there to kind of release some of its fat. And now we're going to go ahead and add our drained and cooked bratwursts, breakfast bratwursts basically. I'm just going to add those directly to the pot. Some of that good old down pig flavor in there. Along with a ham hock, it makes it very hearty. Okay, now I'm going to finish open beans. Now we'll put the beans in. Okay, so all we have left to do is add our beans, which I have already opened and drained. And the combination that I have grown fond of is 3 cans of Great Northern beans. And we'll give Give that a little stir around. And then I like to augment that with it's more spicy or whatever flavor. Not really spicy, but rich of black-eyed peas. It just gives them the two beans work well together. Alright, so we got all of our ingredients in there now. Onions and garlic sauteed here in the pot. The bratwurst browned in the pan. Ham hock fried in the pot. Chicken broth, chicken stock, and now 5 cans of beans. And once that's all in here at this point, it's just a matter of letting nature take its course. Get it all stirred up. I could at this point add a little extra salt, but I'll wait for the ham hock to cook down a little bit and taste it later. And see just how, I think this is a smoked ham hock, so it shouldn't be too salty. But yeah, it's going to be tasty, fellas. So now we've moved it onto the tiny burner to let it just simmer. We just kind of have some occasional bubbles coming up. Looking good. And now I usually taste it and see if it needs any final tweakings. And I'm just mainly concerned about the broth. It's hotter than a pistol. Yep, that tastes pretty tastes pretty darn good. I'll do a second taste just to confirm. Delicious bite there. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's freaking good. That's real good. That's it. You can refrigerate them and they get better for about 3 or 4 days. And then they slowly start to get sour until you have to throw them out. But it'll last a good week. All right. Weenie beans.